Yes, $10. Okay. So we will go ahead and begin our Q&A period. If you haven't received an index card, I know Cheryl was passing them out for the sisters, for the brothers. Nobody requested one, but we have them on the floor here with some pens. If anybody wants to write down a question. They already know everything. They know everything. Hey, we know everything.
Y'all already know everything.
I guess that's the problem with our community. Yeah, right. All right. So but the only way we're going to be taking questions today is through those index cards. So if you, once you write it down, if you want to, you can pass it up, pass it over to Inshira and she'll bring it up. Inshallah, also one more announcement. The mugs here, the masjid provided as gifts for our presenters. The masjid is selling those mugs as a fundraiser for the masjid. For $18, you can have your own mug today, and it's So if you have any coffee drinkers out there, just a little secret about these mugs. Anytime you pour coffee into these mugs, that coffee becomes instantly halal.
Wow. Wow. Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah, I have. Here go one question. I just put it right there.
All right. You gotta write it down. Okay. Yes, sir. So, what is the question supposed to be pertaining to? Because I'm here late, so I apologize. Well, preferably the question is pertaining to the topic discussed today.
Mastering the creation.
Yeah, mastering your creation.
Without compromising your beliefs.
Without compromising your beliefs.
But generally, in most parts, if you, I know you said you just got here, but for the most part, if you have heard if you heard something in the presentation today that you have a question about, that would be excellent. So our first question is, per the recommendation to read books on marriage to prepare for marriage, which books do you suggest, please? I believe that is directed to you.
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. As it relates to marriage, which books to start with in marriage, I'll give you one of the greatest book that you can read on marriage is the Quran. How about that? Let's start there. All right. There are a few places in the Quran that deals with the issues of marriage. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, in the 200s, I think it's like 230, something like that. There's a whole bulk of ayats that deal with marriage, as well as divorce, and Surah Al-Baqarah. Surah number 4, right? Surah An-Nisa, the chapter of the women. There's a bulk of ayats in that surah that deal with marriage. Surah number 24 deals with marriage. Surah number 33, Surah Al-Ahzab, deals with marriage. Surah Al-Talaq, the chapter of divorce, Surah number 65, deals with marriage and divorce. So I just gave you about 5 different references for marriage and divorce. Start there. We want to go out to Barnes and Nobles and buy all these books, and start with the book of your Lord. That's the starting place for anywhere. And then we branch off from that to other subject matters, other writings, secular writings about the subject of marriage. But the starting place for us as Muslims, our reference point is always the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Sahih al-Bukhari, in Sahih al-Bukhari, there's a whole book Bukhari has called Chapter of Nikah. All right? A whole chapter. Go through it. It took me an entire year. I covered the whole chapter of Nikah from Sahih al-Bukhari. It took me a whole year. I think it's about a total of 52 CDs. It's out there somewhere. You can find it. I don't know where it is. That was over 10 years ago. But it's there. The information is available. Seek and you shall find. But I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of references to secular material related to marriage when I give you an ayat about marriage or divorce and you're like, well, where that ayat at? Duh, it's in the Quran. You know what I mean? Like, no one should ever have to ask you, where is that ayat at in the Quran pertaining to marriage and divorce? You should already know. I just gave you all of the references in the Quran that you need for marriage and divorce. Can someone run those back to me? Surah An-Nisa, okay. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2 in the 200s, 230 to like 250 is like a whole bulk of ayats that deal with marriage and divorce. Where else? Surah 65, the chapter of divorce. Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah 33, deals with hijab, deals with some issues with the Prophet ﷺ and his wives. Surah An-Nur, Surah number 24. These are all references for you in the Quran if you need to go back to those places and begin reading about marriage. And the beauty of the Quran is that those places that I just gave you references to, you can read the tafsir of those ayats and understand the stories that are behind those ayats. Why were those verses revealed? Each and every verse that I just referenced for you, there's a story behind the reason why that ayat was revealed. And that gives you context. You understand? Just reading the Quran itself is not enough. You have to understand context. You got to be able to go back to the story that provided the necessity for the revelation of those ayats. And there's entire books that have been written on that in all Arabic. They're called Asbab al-Nuzul, reasons for which ayats were revealed. There's actually scholars have spent years of their lives writing books on this. Meanwhile, we'll grab the Quran, cherry pick an ayat out of the Quran and give our own tafsir to it, our own interpretation. It's like, who told you that ayat means that? Well, it's understood. Well, then, if your intellect is the only thing that we need to use to decide that ayat is already understood, then you just invalidated generations of scholars that have come before you have spent their entire lives studying the Quran because you looked at it and it was self-explanatory. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. No, it doesn't work like that. Maybe in Christianity it works like that, not in Islam. In Christianity, with all due respect, Christians cannot agree on the interpretation of one verse from the Bible. Everybody looks at that verse and everybody gives their own interpretation to what that verse means. We don't do that in Islam. There's a whole system, right, that has been codified. And what is the first place we go to understand the Quran? The Quran. That's the first place. That's the first place you go to understand the Quran. Is through the Quran. Allah is more capable of explaining to human beings exactly what he means. In some verses, there is some ambiguity, and in the ambiguity in those verses are clarified in other verses. And in the second places we go, the Arabic language. Allah revealed the Quran in the Arabic language. Arabs spoke Arabic before the Quran. The Quran did not come and bring the Arabic language. Arabs spoke Arabic before the revelation of the Quran. As a matter of fact, there are ayats in the Quran that were revealed in the dialect of certain tribes in Mecca. Did you know that? Allah spoke the dialect of certain tribes to appeal to them, to give them validation. So if you don't understand Arabic, I'm really confused in how you got this verse all figured out. That's not to say that if you don't know Arabic, you can't learn the Quran, but the in-depth knowledge of the Quran that you need to use that verse as an Islamic ruling, yes, you should know Arabic. You should. And if you're going to use it as a ruling for something that is halal or haram, then you need to have a scholar behind you to support that. What scholar preceded you who said that that ayat should be understood in that manner? You guys follow me? This is how we codify our religion and how we preserve and protect it. This is Allah's book. This is not our book. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words. These are not our words. We don't get to just interpret it any way that we want to. But that's the starting place. I'm not going to go any further in, giving any books that we should go back and read. Start with the Quran. And once you master that, then we move on to the hadith, where some references that I can go to learn more about marriage from an Islamic standpoint. And if you want a secular or clinical standpoint, then you can go to any Barnes and Nobles, any bookstore. You can search online for any academic journals or Psychology Today. You can go through any of those things and find what you're looking for if you want a more clinical or more psychological interpretation or understanding of marriage. We're waiting for him to come back. I hope the person who asked the question, I hope that answers your question. I wasn't, being facetious or anything. I'm serious. If we're going to start reading about marriage, we should start with the Quran.
In your opinion, what do you think the Islamic schools, in particular African American, why do you think Islamic schools, in particular African American, are not heavily populated? It's a two-part question. The second part is, what do you think the standards should be to qualify a student to attend?
Hold on, shit, come to my head. There you go. Well, you did touch on Islamic school in your lecture. So.
Yeah. That's a heavy question. So the first part is, just so I can understand, is why aren't Islamic schools, particularly African American schools, heavily populated? And then the second one is, what qualifies a student to be a student? So I think for this question, I would need to know a little bit. I'll need to have a little bit more context about it. But I think maybe the spirit of the question is, for example, we had maybe 40 or 50 like Claire Muhammad schools around the country or more. Somebody know the number? How many? No, how many did we start off with? Like, let's say in the glory days.
306.
306. 306 Claire Muhammad schools, right? Predominantly African American. And now I think I was looking at the Muslim Journal, which records like the schools that are still open. I think now we're down to maybe like 30, 35.
Around the country.
Around the country. It's less than that. So you can see that this is a heavy question. And I actually prefer, before answering or giving my perspective, if any of the elders in the room, if they have a perspective on it, I'd love to hear it. And then maybe I can chime in. Sister Karima. Wa alaikum assalam.
I think my parents' generation and my generation, we wanted our children to, like my parents, for them, it was not only for us to have an Islamic education, it was also for us to have a safe education. Because I grew up in the time when we were fighting for our rights as African Americans. Mm-hmm. So those were that's what motivated my parents' generation and my generation to put forward. For us, my generation, it was for our children to have an Islamic education, to learn Arabic. And what did we do? We sent our children off to college, like you said earlier. I think that the disconnect is that your generation, they're not supporting Islamic schools. Mm-hmm. We sacrificed everything. Like my son,
Yeah.
his class was a baby class for parents and families who had their children in the schools, 5 to 6 children in the schools through the years. We support it. But I don't think the college, I'm not downplaying your.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
But,
yes, ma'am.
The professors, the PhDs, the masters, they're not supporting the schools.
That's right.
And we have to support the schools.
That's right.
We have been poor for generations, and we still are. But schools take money, and the generation who has more money than we have, they're not supporting the schools.
That's right.
That's my opinion.
That's right.
Can you reiterate that so they can have it recorded?
Yes. So Sister Karima said that when they were coming up, her mother, her father, they were coming up in a time where they had to protect their children. They had to protect the integrity of what they were working for. They had to educate their own children and implant in their own children their ideologies and their mission, their vision. So they had sacrificed. There were many people like Brother Sharif who lived in D.C. and his parents sent him to come stay with a family to be able to attend the Islamic school here. And a family hosted him. So it was a dedication that generation had. And they were like, look, we all know the story. Sister Clara Muhammad, right? That's why the school is named after her, where the police officer, big old giant police officer comes to little Sister Clara. And she's like, ain't no way I'm sending my children to be educated in your school. But those in my generation, those that came after, we didn't have that same dedication. Just to be real, we didn't have that same dedication. Even those that graduated from some of the schools, they went to Harvard, they went to Stanford, they went to some of the Ivy Leagues. They didn't turn around and come back to the school and support the school. I gave the analogy yesterday. If my mother worked at Walmart for 15 years or more, walking up and down the floor, ankles hurting, heels hurting, feet hurting, she invested that time to give me and my brothers and sisters anything that she had to help propel us forward. And it would be crazy of me to take my engineering background and my skills and degree and whatever I have and not invest back into her, right? And into the family, right? But this is what has happened. Our mother, who is the community, the ummah, that's a feminine word. Imam Shadid, am I telling the truth? Ummah is a feminine word. Our mother is this community. But as I was speaking on earlier, to the reality is that, look, a lot of us that have went out and got degrees and we went off into these different spaces, we have not turned back around and brought those things back into the community, lived on less and sacrificed so that our children can follow on the same model. And look, we have enough resources to do it better.
Because our generation looked at the struggles of our parents as, I'm not going through that.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not taking my children through that. We abhorred, right? The parents are sacrificing. They didn't live like that because they couldn't. They lived like that by choice.
That's right.
To make sure that we had more.
That's right.
We are on the other end of that, looking at this like, we don't got this and we don't got that. And the next day our neighbor has this. When I get older, I'm never going to give my kids that experience. And it's that mindset that has created the disconnect, man.
That's right. That's right. So we need to. I mean, we have to. It's a must. Me and Sharif talk about it all the time. Me and Shadid going to have to connect and we're going to have to build. It's absolutely necessary because our little Muhammad and Abu Bakr and Kasib, I mean, they're coming out looking weird, acting weird, because they're mixing with some weird folks.
Absolutely.
Very weird people. So we gotta become very serious about it. And I myself have just recently understood the sacrifice that I'm going to have to take, and that others who are in my position, who came through this womb, are going to have to take in order to continue the work forward. So I think that we all agree that something happened in the handoff, right? And we're going to have to reassess this thing and become very serious. So I think the dwindling down is, and another thing. Imam Muhammad, he was talking to the businessmen in the community. And he said, do not look at having a business for just you and your own family. He said, the business people of the community, you all should be trying to figure out how you can pull up the entire community, create business that will affect the entire community. And he said, you should also be figuring out how you can remove the fear of how I'm going to pay tuition for those that are less fortunate in the community. Like, our children went to an Islamic school, $650 for each student. We're paying $1,300 a month for our daughters, right? I'm pulling up, it's Mercedes, it's Range Rovers, and Mercedes G-Class and Teslas, and I'm like, what Muslims
am I
are
doing wrong?
Yeah, no, but look, it's like what Muslims are gonna be able to send their children to the school, right? Only the quote unquote elite who have enough money. So he said, I'm speaking to those who are in business. He said, think big, and think about how you can expand your business big enough to create a circumstance where you can just pay the tuition of make an endowment. Harvard has, I think they have like a $78 billion endowment from the people the alumni that went to the school, right?
Invest back
invest back. They will leave their belongings to these organizations. And that's how serious we have to become about the establishment of this deen, the establishment of Islam in our life, and us raising up our institutions, inshallah.
I think Dr. Dre gave Berkeley like $70 million.
$70 million. USC, yeah. $70 million.
One thing too, brother, I think is the fact is that
Right. Write it down.
Oh, okay. I got him asking a question now,
okay. If you can hear that, yeah.
Oh.
I don't want to override the administration, so it's however y'all want to do it.
Go ahead. One thing about it too is the fact is that we, as pioneers, we started with nothing. We had nothing except time and the heart to give. Our young people started with something. They never had to struggle, and we had to struggle. So therefore, I think the appreciation is not there because after difficulty comes ease. So you guys have the ease. We had the difficulty, y'all have the ease. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Wow. But then in the verse after, it says, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَبْ. It says, and when you have been exhausted of one way. So you all's way, I don't want to say it's exhausted or if it's over, but you took it so far. It says when you have exhausted, when you are free of one, right? You all have reached a certain point. It says fansab, find the new object, find the new aim. So we were supposed to pick that up, and then we start into the struggle, our struggle, and we take that until we exhaust it. So right now, this is where we at. We have to pick this up. It's not just gonna be an easy thing. We have to pick it up from where they were exhausted with all that they could do. They took it to their position. We have to take it and toe the line forward, and it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be difficult. And if it's too easy, you should start asking yourself and wondering, am I really doing what I should be doing? Alhamdulillah.
Can you explain the difference between manhaj and madhab?
Nope. Next question. Nope. That's why we in this situation right now. Nope. Next question.
And how can we bridge the gap between communities that differ?
Well, that's a good one.
That's a good one. We can address that one.
That's a good one. Okay, so this is going to be a tough conversation right here. How can we bridge the gap between communities that differ? That's a tough one, and that requires not just my input, but it requires the input of all of the African American Muslim leaders, imams, preachers, teachers. That's a question that I am posing to them, for them to answer on their own platforms of how that can be done. And I just don't want, and I don't think that the questioner wants just a theoretical response. Wants something practical, tangible. Because this rift, this fragmentation, this division, this is not Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, warned the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of splitting his ummah into different groups and sects. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself warned his ummah from splitting into different groups and sects. And although he said they would split into different groups and sects, he still said they are my ummah. He said the Jews, they separated their religion into 71 different sects. The Christians came after them and separated their religion into 72 different sects. He said, وَسَتَفْتَرِكُ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ. He said, this ummah, my nation, will separate into 73 different sects. But he still called them my ummah. So that's the first thing that we need to understand, that although we differ, and I love the analogy that Sheikh Abdullah gave of, coming through the womb. We came through different wombs in, our approach to Islam. Still underneath the title Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we have taken this so far that if you don't agree with my madhab, you don't agree with my methodology, you don't agree with my minhaj, it's almost like you're not even Muslim. And although we don't say that because we don't have the legislative authority to say that, we treat you as such. So I don't give you the greeting of salam. Or you go to that masjid, I don't give you salams. Or I see you with this brother, so you must be on what he's on. And, and it's just it's really sad because we're the only group of people that does that to one another. I went to the Islamic University of Medina for almost 7 years. And I saw professors in the university who would talk about each other behind each other's backs. Well, you would always walk past the teacher's lounge and see them all in there drinking tea and coffee. Because despite their differences, they had a job to do. They were educators, professors, some of them full tenured professors. And although, they might, throw shade on this one over here, throw shade on that one over there, you all see them collaborating together to get the work done. And you don't necessarily have to agree with someone in order to, collectively make sure that our ummah is preserved, protected, and is going to, outlive the times in which we are in currently. We don't have to agree on that. Who said that? Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا يَزَالُونَ مُخْتَلِفِينَ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبُّكَ. And you will never cease to be differing or never cease to differ with one another except those whom Allah have mercy upon. So those whom did not fall into differing or, did not fall into, separating and division, then that is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on them. But Allah is speaking to a human element here, and that is that human beings are going to differ or disagree. It's like now that you have an opinion, you gotta rub it in everybody else's face. Well, I don't agree with you on that. I don't agree with everything you said. But you don't have to say you didn't agree with everything that I said. That's a no-brainer. You're a human being. If you agree with everything I said, that would make you me. If you agreed with either you're a yes man or you're me. Those are only two people that would agree with every single thing that comes out of your mouth. Either you're a yes man, you have no brain of your own, no intellect of your own, or you are the other person. And I like to think that the people that I am addressing, the Muslims that we are addressing, these are intellectual, smart, brilliant individuals who have the ability to think for themselves. All right, but, this whole idea that, because we're differing and you're over here and you're over there, that doesn't mean that the work stops. Even the Sahaba, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they didn't always agree on everything, but they still function under the title of companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even the bloodshed between them, they still never, the bloodshed that was spilled between them wasn't as a result of them seeing each other as disbelievers because they disagreed. We have to really take a look at that. Imam Ahmed said about one of his contemporaries, Ishaq ibn Rahuway, He said, Ishaq akhuna wa in yukhalifuna fi ashya. He said, Ishaq is my brother, even though he differs with me in many things. It just speaks to a level of spiritual maturity, that the academic maturity that they had. And I'm just be honest with you. Some people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them a position to either become an imam, become a student of knowledge, become a preacher, a teacher, that position was not for them to educate the ummah. That position was a fitna for them. Understand how that works. There's some people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed them to crawl into this position of preacher, teacher, imam, student of knowledge, not because he has something wonderful to offer the ummah. He has absolutely nothing to offer the ummah. However, that position was a fitna for him. And if and how do we know that? Because we can see that the person is clearly not qualified. And the person is causing more fasad, more corruption in the earth than he is doing good. There's two types of people in the world. Either you're mufsid or muslih. Either you're here to rectify and put things in order, or you're here to destroy order. And all you got to do is look at the end result, and you can determine which category the individual falls into. Everywhere you go, you create fitna. Everywhere. I mean, and this is, and as I spoke to brother earlier, I said, part of my journey was that I had to go full circle, understanding, what we talked about earlier, understanding your true purpose and what your real mission is. And I think that, with the Salafi Dawah, and I'm just speaking frankly here, with the movement of the Salafi Dawah and it coming into the African-American Muslim experience, it created division, not the Dawah itself, not Quran, Sunnah, understanding of the three pious generations, and not the Dawah in its theoretical sense, but the practical application of it amongst people who they themselves needed to be educated. They themselves needed a deeper levels of social education. They might have had the ayats and the hadith and could regurgitate what they read out of a book, but they had no idea what building a society, building a nation, building a community, and had absolutely no knowledge of social science. That's right. And everything that social science entails. Had no knowledge of that. So they ended up causing more harm than they did good. And rather than those of us who afforded the opportunity to go overseas and study Islam and learn Arabic, rather than coming back to our own communities, educating our own communities, we were too busy trying to import an ideology into our communities that did not work for us. And we are living that result right now. It did not work. Give me one community wherein this imported ideology of Salafism came into these communities and changed the community for the better. And I'll shut my mouth. I stand corrected. I don't know one where it was a thriving community, thriving spiritually, materialistic, secularly, you name it, producing who father the Quran, producing righteous, families, producing healthy families, producing healthy children. Show me one. And I'll stand corrected. That imported belief or that imported set of ideologies, it did not work for us. It's like trying to fit a piece of a puzzle in a place where it doesn't belong. And you keep pushing it, and you keep jamming it until it goes in there. And even when it's in there, it looks awkward. And that's how many of us looked, trying to, take on this imported belief set of hardcore approach to Islam. It did not work for us. It fragmented us, it separated us, it destroyed families, it destroyed children, it destroyed communities. And rather than us getting that knowledge and coming back to the African-American Muslim communities, that is our experience, and sharing that information and being tolerant with everything that comes along with that, we would have been on the path of the prophets and messengers. That's right. We would have been on the path of the prophets and messengers, coming back to our people to educate them to Islam. And that doesn't mean that, the brothers and sisters from the Wardeen community or even the Nation of Islam, that they were going to welcome us with open arms. The Arabs didn't welcome the Prophet ﷺ with open arms. Everything that he got, he had to fight for that. Everything. Every single step of the way. Even to the point where he said that there are things that my ummah, meaning the Arabs, are never going to stop doing. He already reconciled with himself that there were certain things that they were never going to stop doing. And what did we do? Rather than cultivate and nurture what was already here, we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. The Nation of Islam, those who transitioned from the Nation of Islam to the Wardin community, to the Darul Islam movement, the Darul Hijra movement, there was a foundation there. There was a foundation there. Sister Claire Muhammad schools, there was a foundation there. All we had to do was come back and build on that foundation. We may not have agreed with everything, but neither did the Prophet ﷺ when he went to his people. Why could that blueprint work for him, but it couldn't work for us? Why could the Prophet ﷺ go, Allah addressed in the ayat that we have sent to you a messenger from amongst yourselves? We have never sent a messenger except bilisani qawmihi liyubayyina lahum. We have never sent a messenger except in the mother tongue, in the language, in the culture of the people he is going to. Why does that work for the Prophet ﷺ and all of the other foreign communities, but it doesn't work for us? The moment I say, I speak to my community, my experience, oh, he's a nationalist. I'm a nationalist. Guess what? I'm a nationalist. Add that to the list of things that you label me as. But I'd be damned if I spend the vast majority of my time with what Allah gave me trying to force people who already have some type of foundational understanding of Islam, even if it's just La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, trying to force them to accept this Arabized version of Islam. And what do I mean by that? I mean when we're trying to make African-American Muslim communities in America look like Saudi Arabia. This is not Saudi Arabia. It will never be Saudi Arabia. The people that you are preaching to will never be Saudis. They're never going to accept that. What part of that don't we understand? You have to meet people where they are. That's right. And raise them up from where they are. That doesn't mean that you're going to agree with everything that is going on in Black culture. I don't agree. There's a lot of things I see in the African-American Muslim experience. I cringe. I'm like, oh my God, they do that? That's normal? All right, but I gotta navigate my way through that because there are deeper issues at the root of our culture that we need to focus on. You guys, am I making sense here? Yes, sir. I'm just speaking frankly here because we dropped the ball. We dropped the ball. Here I am in 2019. I graduated from the university in 2007, and I'm just now making my way here. You understand? Now, mind you, that might not have been necessarily all due to me. Sometimes, people like to put you in a box. Oh, he's still on the Salafi stuff. We don't want that over here. And it's like, but he's not. But people like to put you in a box because that makes it easier for them to deal with you. Makes it easier for them to dismiss you from the narrative. And I'm not going anywhere. Y'all got to deal with me. Until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call me back, you have to deal with me. No matter how much you hate to hear my mouth. Oh my God, this dude again, opening up Periscope, opening up Facebook Live. Let this guy just disappear. You have to deal with me until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call me back. And even after I'm gone, I got 12 sons you got to deal with too. Allah forbid that any of them got any of me in them, then you got to deal with that too. You understand? You got to deal with that. That's not going anywhere. Every group of people has someone to inherit their beliefs and ideology. That's not going anywhere. You got to deal with it. And no matter how much you dislike what I'm saying, no matter how much you dislike the way I'm saying it, I'm still your brother in Islam. You got to love me. That doesn't change. That's from the foundational beliefs of Islam. You love your brother in Islam. I don't care how much you dislike me. I don't care how much you dislike what I say. I am your brother in Islam, and you have to love me, and that's not going to change. If you don't, then that says something about your faith, not mine. You understand? So, I just think that, we dropped the ball, man. We dropped the ball. But, alhamdulillah, I'm woke now. I see clearly. I see clearly where my energy needs to be. And inshallah ta'ala, as long as the door is open, as long as I can assist, I'm here. And I just wish that, other students of knowledge and everybody at their own pace. I believe that there are others that, will, in due time, see it in this perspective, but we've wasted so much time, man. Past 20 years was just a big waste, man, of just fighting and arguing and bickering. Who's minhaj, who's methodology, who's this, who's on it, who's off it, who's straight, who's this, who's that. Just a waste of time. 20 years have gone by. We lost maybe 2 or 3 generations of our children. Yeah, this stuff started around 98, 99. Since then, all the way up into 2019. Wasted so much time. The Prophet ﷺ built Medina in 10 years. Could you imagine but they were focused. That was a focused 10 years. Can you imagine how much we could accomplish in 10 years if we were focused, a collective effort?
That's right.
You can imagine how many sisters can have children in a healthy marriage in 10 years? How many children can we produce that are half of the Quran in 10 years? How many imams we can produce if we just focused? Focus on us. Focus on us for a moment. How much we could accomplish in a 10-year span. How many more new imams we can develop. Our masajid are bereft of imams. There's an imam deficit. Because we are not producing. Because we're too busy fighting. Even when the Prophet ﷺ was trying to tell Quraysh, let's not fight, man. Like, we can accomplish more if we're not fighting. And no, they wanted to fight. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Akalahum al-harb. Like, they have been consumed by war. Even when I'm trying to make peace with you, you still want to fight. And that's how some of us are, even in our relationships. Even when there's no one to fight, you're going to create a monster so you can have someone to fight. We have been so accustomed to fighting with one another that even when it's time to lay the weapons down and build, we still want to fight. And I'm just saying for the record, like, I don't want to fight with anybody. I want to build. I want to educate. I want to inspire. I want to empower. Those are key words. Empower, meaning I don't want you to be a blind follower. I want to teach you how to fish so you can get your own. That's real leadership. Not having a whole bunch of followers, not having an entourage following you around. I don't want a bunch of people behind me that are mindless, spineless individuals behind me. That says a lot about you. If those are the type of people that you got following behind you. I want people to say, I don't agree with you on that because Allah says here. I respect that. I respect that. But what I don't respect is bootlicking and spineless, agreeing with everything that somebody says. That's a lack of empowerment. And we're never going to get anywhere with that. So, inshallah ta'ala, we hopefully this is a step in the right direction. Hopefully, you guys opening your doors, welcoming us, and especially me in particular, because I know that, I can get on some people's nerves, man. It's not intentional, man. I had a rough upbringing, but you guys got to deal with that. As they said, that the Nation of Islam gave Malcolm X the hammer to hammer out all this pain. And you guys are seeing some of that. Some of my pain is in some of my lectures, the way that I come off. You might look at it and say, well, he sounds a little arrogant, yeah, I can be. I grew up in an environment where we played the dozens. We cracked on one another. You had to be cocky. You had to be confident. You understand? That's the type of environment I came from. So now that I'm a preacher, you don't think that some of that is going to come? Like, you got to sift through that and see the message. It's there. It's in there. Right. Oh, he was saying just a little bit.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar. Is that the end of the program?
No, I'm saying
Let's start the slow clap. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Imam Shadid, he said a lot on the topic, but I just 2 important points. I think the leadership has to come together and start working on tangible projects and strategizing together on how we can take our communities forward. One thing we've done in Houston is that we have, I believe it's a quarterly leadership meeting and this is a group of people from different leaders from different communities working together. And we see clearly that the strategies that target us, the strategies that target our children, they don't say, okay, these African American Muslims came from this womb, they came from this womb, they came from this womb. We're not going to target this one or target that one. They're targeting us all and targeting all of our children. So, you know, if we look at the big picture and look at where we're going, the leaders will start to come together and work on strategy so that we can ensure the best situation for our women and children. And also women that are leaders in different capacities as well, coming to the table to bring the concerns and working together. And then also, I have noticed that a lot of times the beefing it starts with the brothers. So